Hello, this is a Milli encasement video by Konopski glass. So to encase a Milli Chip into glass, you're going to need a big rod. I like 19 mil a lot. You're going to want some American black color, and you're going to want a honey stick. Compressed air helps a lot with the cadmium colors, but you don't have to do it. Anyways, so you got your pre-warmed Milli Chip. Ideally it's saw cut. Here's mine right now. This is an eyeball. So you gotta take off some of the haze real quick. So just flash it very lightly. There, like in the edge of your fan. I'm using compressed air too. Very lightly check. Make sure. You try to make sure it doesn't boil, because if it boils, it's wrecked. So I go in and out. I just heat it for a very short period of time at a time. And once you're happy with the, you can see very well. See how that's like all better looking? This is what it was before. It looks the same in that video. Anyways, so now take the chip, stick it on your pony on the crappy side. It's a lot better if you can center it. Now you got your chip, and just need to polish it a little more. Flame polishing is not as good as the lapping, but it's a lot more practical. Yeah. If it was fully lapped, you wouldn't have to do this. Do one last time. And again, I'm really just taking the time, no rush. Okay, so now you got that all good to go. I'm going to take my 19 mil rod, and I got to get it pretty hot, so I'm just spinning. It'll take a minute, to be honest. Compressed air helps a lot with optical clarity, for whatever reason, I find. So anyways, you get your big rod pretty hot. You want to make sure the end of it's the same size as the chip. Don't let your chip get too cold. It's very small, cool off very quick. And you want your rod very hot, and you want your chip just beginning to glow. The biggest thing is not letting the chip distort. Don't let it get hot enough that it will distort. So once it's showtime, take the chip and stick it on there, work it in, you check it from all directions. And it's hard to get it perfectly on center. Like this isn't perfectly on center either. Wait a second, and then I crack it off. And now, lightly work it in just a bit though. I'm using super low pressures for my torch. But if you have a smaller torch, you might just be using regular pressures. But I got that full hand. So I'm just trying to make it so the Milli is completely fused in all directions. And I squish it slightly, but I don't want to push it in. If you push it in, it'll distort it. So don't push it in. But it has to be melted in. There can't be any like wonky angles, because if there's any wonky angles when you go to do the black, you'll trap an air bubble, and that's basically like a second. So don't do that. So you try to make it so it's all like in the same plane of glass. less tooling, the better. So once it's in there, give it a second, you're going to take your black. And what we're basically going to do is bury the exposed part of the milli, all in a hope to protect the front part. So you take your black, and you're going to gather it on top of the face of the milli. And then you're going to turn it and just start wrapping it. Kind of like you were doing coil bonding almost, but it's just a solid. It's not a hollow coil bonding. And I like to do at least one layer around the thing after I go all the way around. Wrap it in. And it's just like a little wrap, making it so the outside is black. And this is a thing I like to do even on my pendants, like this one for instance. I did this one, I did the same black thing, but I wrap it with red later, for instance. Take a minute. And you really only want to use your graphite a couple specified times. The less tooling you do, the better it is. So I melt it in. I try to make it so the thing on the end, like the Milli Chip, is the same diameter as the tube, the rod, excuse me. This is 19, so you use make it 19 millimeters. It's a little small, so I'm going to make it a little bigger. And unfortunately, compressed air and this very low pressure, it takes forever. I'm used to much higher pressure without compressed air, so it would be a lot quicker, but it's very hard on the glass. So I'm heating in front of the image, gathering it slightly. A little angle up, just a little bit. Right now you're kind of opening up the image with the clear, and this determines how big your glass eye will be. Anyway, so once you got your gather, that's pretty big, so I'm gonna take some off, but you always go a little big and take some off. Rather than, it's much harder to add more clear glass after the fact. I don't. It'll mess up the optics of it. So, you take the putty. Real quick too, before I forget, I'm just going to smooch the back a little bit. Just a little, yeah. That also just kind of helps to open it up. When I wrap it with color at the very end, I do another bigger smush, and it's the same thing. But it has more color around it, protecting the image even more. And then you're going to go just past the gather and start the flame cut. And this flame cut's going to take forever because it's 19 mil with the compressed air. But, it's okay. Glass blowing takes time. The flame working. $19 rod's pretty big for most people. Takes a while. Good stuff. So kind of having like a bowling pin shape. I just clean up the end of the 19 mil rod. These 19 mils are nice too. They don't crack as much when you keep the end and just sit it down. I noticed the 14 and 16 mils like to do that more. Me melting the ends on like this, making it nice, seems to help with that too. To be honest, I don't know the physics of that. Anyway, so now you got your piece, and you got too much on it. That's too big. So I'm gonna take some off. Take off most of the nipple, essentially. I'm actually going to take a little bit more off, so. And then once you're happy with the amount you're taking off, you just slowly work the glass in the end back in. Focus more on the ends and the middle. And so now what you got to do is blend it, I would call it. So once it's melted back in a little better. Because right now it is like almost a ball, but I want to show it off a little better, so I'm going to try and open the image up a bit, so I heat in the middle more while putting it at a bit of an angle. You're really just making it a bigger part, like that. Increasing the diameter. You only ever do bad, don't you? If you do too much, you'll mess it up. So I'm pretty happy with that. Let it cool. Sometimes these little marbles you gotta reheat the ends for a second. It's still too hot. It was a little bubbly on the inside, but I don't think a normal human being would notice. You know, I noticed. I got more. So, maybe you can see it now. So I just reheat the end a little bit. And yeah, that's basically it. You've encased a Milli, made into a marble. So now I just I like using one of these little marble mold graphite blocks, and I just put it in there. And I break off the cold steel bunny, and then I just go in with the torch. And there's some clear on the back of this, but it doesn't really matter because I like to cover mine up with color. Make a necklace of it. Ideally do not have to smudge it in. But that little opiate. And yeah. And just like that, you have. Here is your Milli marble, and you basically have to anneal them at this size, unless you want to like roll the dice. Basically, that looks pretty nice. Yeah, cool. Anneal your work. Always anneal it. Thanks again.